Hello, everybody. It is I, Lamerck, and welcome to this episode of the Wardroom. Today, we are going to be looking through matches 4 through 7. We have a lot to be looking at, but I want to take a little bit of time to go over our league standings. And I know this is probably abrupt for some of you just seeing the ping in the Discord. And so I'm going to pad out just the first few minutes talking about the league standing and and talking about where we have been so far in that regard. So as you can see on the screen, we do have the league standings with in the order from top to bottom. We have the Leviathans, the SCP-38s, the Krakens, the Marines, the Jackals, and the Royal Black Fleet. Now, this is an imperfect league standing because there are two teams here who have had one more game than everybody else has, as you can see by the SCP 38s and the Jackals with their 3 game record compared to everybody else's 2 game record. So it is a little bit misleading as to the state of how the league will be after everyone has, I would there would be a preferential way that we would be able to do this every 3 battles, but of course, we will do the best with what we have here and talk about where we are at this moment, this snapshot in time. So right now, the only undefeated team is the Leviathans, which we have a 2-0 record and a very healthy points difference of 26,000. The SCP-38 are in second place, and they are holding a very firm second place here, despite their recent loss, which will be what we talk about in the very last of the battles that we're going to review today. Even still, their 2 victories to 1 defeat is quite nice, and they do have a healthy positive point difference with 3,733. Then we get to the teams that have the negative points difference, with the Krakens a 1-1, the Marines a 1-1, the Jackals a 1-2 losses, and the Royal Black Fleet an 0-2. Again, these league standings can only tell so much of the story. A lot of these battles are really interesting for how close they were, or the messages that were sent to the league that cannot be reflected in points differences and cannot be reflected in win-loss records. But it is important to note where we are now, and remembering always that the real thing that this league standing is measuring is which teams are on the top 3 and which are on the bottom 3. Because at the end of the season, and this will change tremendously between now and the end of the season, but at the end of the season, the top 3 teams will duke it out to see who gets the champion's crown. And so the way that will work is that the second and third place team in the league will have a knockout round, and then the winner of that match will fight the first place team. So if it were to happen today, the SCP-38s and the Krakens would fight a battle, and then the winner of that battle would fight the Leviathans for the crown. So that's where we stand now. But like I said, this is just the beginning. We have many more months of battles and many more battles in those months that are going to change these standings tremendously. But I wanted to show it to you all just so that you have an understanding of where we are at. I would say, if I have to make like predictions about how these may change, I see the the competition for third place being a very heated one. Um, After what we'll take a look at today, the Jackals, I believe, have arrived at a turning point in their fleet, and I think even though they're not looking this, they have the highest negative points right now. But and of course the most losses, but again they're kind of a week ahead of everybody else. I think that they have found something in their fleet, specifically a leader in their fleet who has the capacity to claw them up the rankings. The Marines also had a rather unfortunate week this cycle of battles, in which they had to put forward a admiral who did not have the level of experience that many other admirals in this league have had through the preseason and in the early season 1. That loss, while actually a really kind of promising loss, which we'll discuss a little bit today. I think that's going to turn around when more experienced admirals like Kieran's and Chewie of Troy get in the hot seat and start bringing the Marines some consistent victories. As well, the Krakens with their 1-1 record, that might look a little shaky, but the Krakens are an incredibly powerful team when the cards are sort of the stars align for them and the cards play out right in their battles. They have, a record that I think is not indicative of their capacities here. And of course, the SCP-38, they have to prove from here on out that they deserve the second place position. I think that they do. They definitely deserve a second or third place position, I feel. But, that has to play out in battles. And that's going to come from some self reflection that we will hopefully see in the future when it comes from them talking about things like their 13 gun positioning and overall, like their choice. Are we an aggressive team or are we a cautious team? Are we a aggressive team? Are we a tricky team? Right? They're having like an identity crisis, I think, nowadays, and that's got to get resolved before they are able to really put together a string of victories that's going to keep them at the position that they're at now. Um, Again, and for the Royal Black Fleet, I think um, they again have to probably get to somewhere where aggression and an aggressive strategy begins to work for them. Because I think in the battles that we've seen from them, one of them we'll look at today, but one of them they've already done in the last series, the lack of aggression from them. And I think maybe everybody could take what I'm saying with a grain of salt because, I can be pretty aggressive myself, and I consider that to be a winning strategy. But you got to fight and bring the fight to the enemy to win battles. And I think what the Royal Black Fleet have shown is that they haven't put together the strategy that gets them to victory positions just yet. And so, to see a growth from them on that is also going to, they have every capacity. Like their crews are great, their captains are experienced. They have the tools to put together something where they could start swinging up and knocking out other teams. It's just obviously, as you can see in the record, they have not done so yet in season one. So we'll analyze them and everybody else today as we go through a series of 4 games. So let's move to our to my screen and and take a look at week 4, the Krakens versus the Jackals. So I'm going to open that here, and we'll get into this right away. All right, so the Krakens versus the Jackals on Diamond Islands. Let's kind of set up the start here. Get to an overhead position. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, and I apologize. I jump around a lot in these, trying to get to a good view of how things start. So we've got an eastern wind direction, which means that the wind is going to be headed in this direction here. Sorry, let me blow this up properly here for you all. Um, so the wind is going to be headed in, again, this direction here. And so you can see in the beginning, both of these teams are going to try and go basically diagonally against it. And what we're going to see happen is going to be familiar to people who watched the battle between the Jackals and the SCP, this most recent battle, because they kind of have a little, a little battle kind of going around somewhere around here, which is very reminiscent of what happened with the Jackals and the SCP. But let's see how it develops. Um, the I think the issues that the Jackals had here, they really learned from later on. So what we'll see is, again, these two lines meeting here, and some a sort of tie happens here. An equal amount of damage goes into each of these 13 guns from this exchange, and it is basically like a line battle. So let's just bounce forward a little bit here to show how that happens. And I think what you'll see is that both of these fleets end up hammering each other's 13 guns. This is a pretty neutral maneuver, so I don't have too much to comment on it, and I want to move past it pretty quickly because this is not where the battle and the results of the battle really take place. It is after this when both of the fleets pass one another. I think the only thing that I can comment on here is, and I'm sure I did it at the time, is let's go back just a little bit to this snapshot here. one of the things I commented on at the time, and I don't know, it was a thought, but it's not necessarily maybe the best maneuver, and that is for the the Krakens to come this way. Um, it is, again, I kind of represent the aggressive side of maneuvers and how they can be. Um, this may have been a very dangerous maneuver, but again, the wind is going east, right? So that is a move that goes directly with the wind because that's the way the wind is going. And to counter that, these ships would then have to turn against the wind, right? They're not, this linear position here is not really lending itself to that. Instead, it's very much lending itself to something where like this ship would turn and then 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 this ship would turn. This is something that we've seen the Jackals do like more than once, where they get pressured and then they just lose their line cohesion. Now, if they did it completely correctly, what we would see is maybe like this ship go forward and this ship come in behind it and then this ship stay back here. Maybe this ship turn this way and this ship turn this way. There's options to deal with a guy bringing his fleet in a line back here. I am skeptical that the Jackals would have done such a thing, and I think that these guys could have basically just put their fleet here, and then if these guys turn this way, whipped around behind them and then just put a whole lot of hurt into the Jackals fleet. Now, coming in, no doubt, this area right here, right until they got to this area, would have been pain for the KRN or for the Krakens. But their HPs here show me that they could definitely take that pain with no major problems. So I wouldn't really worry too much about that if I were the Krakens. I'd have gone in and I'd have cut me off a piece of that bacon at the back of their fleet. And I think that is an option, but it's not like the Krakens lost some battle here because of a missed opportunity. I think very much so they just decided we're going to do something very similar. We're just going to do it later. And that's perfectly fine. And so, yeah, um, you know, I think let's move forward with this and see where the battle actually does happen because once it gets started, it is decisive. So at this point, I just want to kind of show you guys, and you can kind of see it up here a little bit. The Jackals curve downwards, and the Krakens swing around this diamond island, right? So we're looking on the main screen at some fun gunboat battles here, but of course we are here to watch the fleet maneuvers, and so this is where things get pretty bad for the Jackals, and where they kind of have like I don't know some sort of paralysis that happens here. So what we see is the Krakens head into basically head east with the wind and swing around behind the Jackals' backs. They pressure the Jackals. This looks kind of dangerous at first for the Krakens, but the Jackals holding position here allows the Krakens to just move in and pressure, and they are firing all on the 13 gun, which is really, really smart. I mean, they will fire on the 13 gun, and they'll sink it. Both teams really go for each other's 13 guns, but a tragic thing happens for the Jackals, and it is that they get the Kraken's 13 gun down to almost no health whatsoever, and then they do not sink it until much later when a gunboat or rocket boat does it for them. And by that time, the battle is basically lost. So this is where you could see the Krakens kind of form their fleet into one that focuses fire on the 13 gun. And as you can see from the ship HPs that we have at the top of the screen, they are virtually even in the 13 gun damage, which they traded at that first line battle. And so now this is where the pressure on the rear of the line, and pressure on the rear of the line may be a theme that we talk about more than once today. Pressure on the rear of the line causes the Jackals to kind of have a break in their formation, right? So let's fast forward a little bit and you can see the results of that. So right here, you can see where the Jackals start losing this fleet cohesion, right? So if we really take a look at what we're doing here, this is where you start to see, this, take a look at how these guys are blocking each other. And they're doing that because they're trying to go around here, right? And they don't do it in an orderly manner. Again, this is a Jackal's weakness that we have seen more than once. Their fleet does not stay organized. And something that the Krakens do interestingly here, risky, but as with some another kind of Kraken's you know trope, we'll call it at this point, is sort of risky but effective maneuvers. Their line is split into three, and it's quite spread out. What this allows them to do is it allows them to fire from the front, fire from the side, and then I guess fire from the back, right? And that dichotomy, or not dichotomy, but that variety of angles is going to make it so that it's very hard for the Jackals to figure out who they should be focusing on. And it gets them into some trouble because who they decide to focus on is the flagship. That usually is a very good thing. And if they sunk the Kraken's flagship, it would probably put them in a position of parity between the fleets. They do not, and that flagship just throws damage into the Jackals for the rest of this battle, or at least much of the rest of this battle. So let's see how that goes. Um, again, you'll see these three ships back here are going to put a lot of damage into the front of the Jackal's fleet. And the pressure never stops on these 13 guns. They're always firing at each other. And it's just sort of by a coin toss. To whose 13 gun sinks first. So anyway, it is the Jackals that sinks first. And then, from this point here, probably skipped a little too far ahead. So, let's just actually watch it play out here. Maybe we'll increase the speed. Oh, have you ever tried that before? That's a fun one. So as we increase the speed here and we watch it in a little fast motion here, you can really see how the 13 gun evades and stays out. Because once their 13 gun sinks, the Jackals sort of just forget about the Kraken's 13 gun. They then position themselves right around here, and they try their best to just fire into these 8 guns. Another weakness that the Jackals often find themselves in is that when their 13 gun, well, this is not just the Jackals, this is a lot of teams. When their 13 gun, when their command ship goes down, they sort of lose purpose and direction. What they were doing a minute before the flagship went down, which is focusing on the enemy flagship, was the right call. They stop it. And I mean, take a look at this ship HP up at the top here. The Krakens are like a strong breeze could sink that flagship, but the Jackals either don't know it or don't have, like, if my flagship sunk, I would immediately go to overhead mode and take a look at the enemy's ship HPs, which you're totally allowed to do in this league. Some admirals spend their entire time in like a bird's eye mode, looking at the enemy's ship HPs and using that to choose targets for their fleets. It's a perfectly valid strategy. I don't particularly do it myself until my ship sinks, but it's something that you can do. So I wish they had done that, and then the admiral had turned around to his fleet and said, like, okay, you need to just, I don't care what you do, sink that flagship. Now, later in this battle, the Jackals are going to make this like bonsai charge maneuver into the teeth of enemy cannons. It is way too late. They hover in this position for a very long time, and let's let them get to that position on the screen. They hover in this position for way too long, just taking enemy fire, when they really did need to very quickly go for the enemy's flagship, sink it, and then they could do, because then they'd have basically an even game. I mean, look at the 8 gun ship HPs. They're relatively similar. It's not like the Jackals are like down really far in opposition to the Krakens. A good maneuver or two could win it for them, but the Jackals, they just hang out. They hang out in a way that is just really not good for them. And this position here is doing nothing at all for them. And having this guy far back here, I mean, I'm sure he wants to deal with maybe like gunboats or something, but that's not doing them any favors either. So really what it is it's 4 of these guys, because this guy over here is not participating just yet, versus 3 of these guys here. And so, it's just too much. Now, do the Krakens have the greatest formation of all time? No. But what they are doing great is they are keeping those 8 guns, their 8 guns, right in the face of the Jackal's 8 guns, so that the Jackal's 8 guns never even think about their 13 gun, right? The Jackals never think, oh, we should do something to get that Kraken 13 gun. Maybe they're thinking, oh, send the gunboats in there or something. It's a strategy that does not happen until a little bit later. But focusing fire on an 8 gun, it just ain't it. Now, as the announcers, myself and Amit and Pizza, are talking here, we're positing that maybe the best solution or the best remedy to the Jackal's positioning problem right now is to just just run. And how they would run at this point would be to, let's get to a position where I can see a bit of a more overhead, would be to go down in this direction. They remember they were kind of here. And so it would be to just go this way and then draw all these guys to follow them this way and then maybe spin around and hit them as they come in one by one. Like there are options in that way, but as you can see from what we're looking at here, they go this way. But that's not good. Look at all of these guys and their various different firing angles on this, right? This is just a suicidal maneuver. I mean, there's really nothing else to say for it. It's a suicidal maneuver that costs the Jackals tremendous amounts of ship HP that they do not have. And all this time, they're not firing back, right? Or if they are firing back, it's at ships that really they shouldn't be targeting because, again, they really need to be targeting that 13 gun, and they don't. And I think that's to their detriment. Now, they hold out for quite a while because their remaining 8 guns do have pretty decent HP, but, you know, that's all well and good to hold on for a long time, but they do eventually get wiped, if I recall correctly. If they don't get wiped, they get nearly wiped. And, you know, so, I mean, as you can see, this is for the Krakens, this is a beautiful, beautiful opportunity to just put tremendous amounts of damage into these 8 guns. There are 3 8 guns remaining. 2 of them are in the range of, you know, 4 ships of the enemy, maybe even 5 at certain points. Like this ramming thing from the Jackals, what's it doing for them? What is ramming that 8 gun doing for you? It's not doing much, and they're getting completely surrounded by the enemy as they do so. So they kind of run into a full envelopment. And then they split up. So then we end up having these ships, you know, if we take a little skip forward and try to get to an overhead, you know, we've got if we take a look and try to figure out where I think we got one up here, we got one down here, and maybe this is one of them. I don't think it is. I think at this point the other one is sunk. So there's just 2, and they're completely split up. You know, this is a divide and conquer strategy. The Krakens do an excellent job. The Krakens have lost their flagship at this point. I think a gunboat got them, and if they didn't, they would have probably gotten taken out by this 8 gun by the time it got there. But again, you know, it's not about keeping the 13 gun up forever. It's about keeping the 13 gun up for such a long time that you know it's one of those. You know, it just puts in so much HP damage. I'm seeing in the chat that they're talking about, yeah, the Admiral crashes about now, you know, and or you know, crash before, like, right. So that moment of hesitation from the Jackals, where they were sitting somewhere around here and just kind of shooting and not knowing what to do, that decision paralysis, came from a lack of having an admiral's perspective and an admiral's commands. I sympathize with the difficulty of that position, but your whole team is a competitive team. All your captains are competitive captains. If you lose your admiral, somebody else needs to be there to step up and issue commands. It's not like there's one admiral with piloting a bunch of bots. These are all players. These are captains. These are co-admirals, or they should be co-admirals. There's still people there that can make an executive decision. I think a few moments of paralysis is one thing to confirm, holy crap, our admiral is not here with us, and then somebody's got to step up and take command of the fleet. Maybe that happened. Maybe that process was longer than they would have liked. I am perfectly willing to be, you know, kind of generous with the excuse that we lost our admiral because it was a, you know, obviously a very crucial moment there. But, you know, we're all here at a competitive level. And there are many people in the Jackals. There are multiple captains in the Jackals who are capable of leading a fleet, as we will see later. And so, you know, somebody's got to step in and make a maneuver. And honestly, if your admiral, you know, goes radio silent and you can't find him, somebody's got to tell these ships, get the hell out of here, get out. And that is what I would have hoped that the Jackals would have done, is made a retreat in this direction. Again, not here on the screen that we're looking at, but much earlier when we were talking about some of their options. By this point, the battle is over. And so, you know, the battles, you know, it just gets more drawn out from here. These 2 ships do reconnect, I think, somewhere down here. They put up a good last stand, and then they get destroyed. Krakens win, Jackals lose. This was not the Jackals' finest battle. This was a great one from the Krakens, And I've talked a lot about what the Jackals didn't do right here, but I think we also have to talk about what the Krakens did do right here. They kept good fleet formation. They took a risk keeping their fleet a little bit extended, in that sort of, so that when the Jackals focused fire on their 13 gun and turned all their ships to fire at that 13 gun, there were like 2 to 3 8 guns from the Krakens that were just able to fire right into the front of their fleet as they were coming in and focusing on the Kraken's 13 gun. So I really liked the Kraken's play here, and this is an example of Krakens just kind of showing that they are at a high level of play, and their admirals do understand how to press advantages, and maybe they're not taking that early aggressive action that I was talking about earlier. Maybe that was just a really good decision on their part, to find a position where they didn't have to risk anything to get a really strong position over the enemy, because in this they really didn't risk very much, or at least what they risked did not get capitalized on by the Jackal. So anyway, yeah, I would say this was a really great victory for the Krakens and a tough one for the Jackals. They come back later. We'll talk about that when we get there. But let's move on to our next battle, which is number 5, game 5, the Marines versus the SCP. So game 5, Marines versus the SCP. This is a very tough one, and we have some caveats that we have to say right off the bat. You can see somewhere maybe early on that this is Nazguler in command of the Marines, and he is in command because he had the 2 admirals of this fleet, who are Kieran's and his co-admiral Chewie. Neither of them were available, so Nazguler got put in an unenviable position of having to lead a fleet that he has never led before as admiral. A first time player in that position here in the NSL. So we are all going to be very forgiving to Nazguler for the admittedly catastrophic start that his team has here. It's not entirely his fault, but there is a decision that was made that really should not have been made. And so, Nazguler, if you are watching this, understand that I provide this feedback to you not to, in any way insult you, but to give you a constructive criticism about if you ever are put back in this position again, on where things went wrong. That said, after the catastrophe that happens in this battle, the Marines pull together a really fantastic second half of the battle. There is a mistake that is made at the end that kind of throws away some of the gains that they made. And so we'll talk about the 2 major mistakes that the Marines make in this battle. But, again, for a first-time admiral, the pressure cannot be higher. This is the highest level of naval competition. And so, and a guy like Muffin Top Scout is a first-rate admiral. And, to sort of go against him and put up the fight that they did, I have nothing but respect for the Marines. They are a alliance between 2 extremely strong, and not just 2, there are 3 regiments, but they are mostly comprised of 2 very strong teams, and I think they have a very bright future ahead of them in the league. So with all those caveats aside, let's get into this thing. We've got the Marines over here, we've got the SCP over here. Let's get to the part where things really, let's see, 25, 40. All right, so this is the last moment where the Marines could do something extremely, I don't know whether we want to say interesting or advantageous for themselves. And what they can do here is to go right here, this way. So let's take a look at the wind. The wind is southeast, okay? So that means the wind is going this way, right? So right now, the Marines have the opportunity to get almost full wind and charge a completely isolated 13 gun. The SCP-38 has mentioned in some of their post-game interviews, especially their most recent one, is is a little bit more conservatism with their 13 gun. They love to throw it into the fray, and they love to risk it. And sometimes it works for them, and sometimes it doesn't. It works for them here like stupendously. But I think against some more seasoned admirals, this level of split between the fleets would be capitalized on. Now, the way that you would do this, right? The way that you would hit this guy without falling into the trap of having all of these guys, because remember, wind southeast. To go against them, they are going basically not against the wind, but it's not a very good angle against that wind. So it's going to take these guys a while to join the fray here. The way you capitalize on this is you jet back here. He's going to be going down here. He's going to have pretty good wind. You're not going to sink the 13 gun with this maneuver. What you are going to do is bully it and maybe get an HP deficit in the 13 gun nice and early. And that sets you up later in the game to be able to take risks to sink the 13 gun, right? There are multiple different engagements that fleets tend to have in this league. So usually they have like a first brush with each other, and that sets the tone. It tells each admiral, okay, I've lost more ship HP than they have. Maybe I need to play conservative for the rest of the battle. Or if you're the guy who wins that first brush, you're like, okay, I have done good damage to their flagship. I can be a little bit more aggressive for the rest of this. And then the interplay between those two perspectives is what creates the fleet formations that we see afterwards. So you cut your fleet basically maybe like this way, and you hit this guy all as he travels down here to reconnect to this fleet. And then as these guys come up, you have a pretty good position. And the reason that you would have a good position is because you'd end up somewhere around here. And as these guys come up, you can then whip around and catch the wind, and you've got the wind and they don't because they've got to connect somewhere around here. That's one possible way that this could go. There are a lot of possible ways this could go, but that would be my prediction. The problem is these guys go here. Why is this such a bad decision? The reason is, first off, the entire enemy fleet is at the end of this route. And the other thing that's so bad about this route is that it is utterly predictable, right? Unless you go here, which gets you basically nothing, you are funneled into a channel here. And predictability is the death of a maneuver, because if your enemy can, the further ahead of time your enemy can see what you're going to do, the longer they have in this relatively slow competition, right? These boats don't move particularly fast. The more time they have to set up and prepare to engage you at a point that they know that you're going to end up at. So I just said that this would be a useless maneuver. Actually, that wouldn't be a useless maneuver, and we'll talk about how that probably could have saved these guys. So as they get down here, these guys realize, holy crap, they're not going out here to hit our bait. They're going to come down here, and we have an amazing opportunity to just fire nonstop into them here, which is, of course, exactly what happens. What the Marines could have done is come here and then basically set their fleet up right about here, and these guys up here wouldn't have really been able to shoot through this island too much. And maybe I'd say a 13 gun and 2/8 could set up here and really bully these ships down here. That would have been the position that could have really utilized this trajectory. Is it as good as bullying this 13 gun? I would probably say no, but is it maybe safer? Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Because again, these guys are not going to be able to turn around and go down here. Maybe they could reverse. Certainly possible. But then these guys could just run and get out of there. This guy's going to have a bit of a time getting back. So you have, no matter what, you have time where you have more ships because these guys are all together than these guys do, because you have a 13 gun over them. So, having just this position here could be nice. Maybe these guys come up here and try to surround them, but again, they have egress. They have the ability to get out of that situation. So again, going here, not the worst thing in the world, but continuing through here, an absolutely catastrophic decision. And it will, I've been drawn all over this. So let's just watch how it plays out, because it does not play out well. We'll skip a little bit forward. Going into the teeth of the enemy here, there's really no benefit to it. The worst thing about this, as you could see, is that each of these ships takes full broadside from the enemy one at a time, right? And you can, that's not me drawing now. That was me drawing then. So sorry if this gets a little confusing with all these lines that I drew in the past and now will draw in the future. But you can see that each one of these ships, as it comes out of this bay, is going to get slammed one at a time. Now, obviously, they're going to focus fire on the 13 gun, and they have literally almost every ship to do it with. What happens here, of course, is that these 8 guns just shred the 13, destroy most of its cannons, and most importantly, they decimate its crew. Not decimate, because even decimate means that, like, a few guys out of 10 live. But no, this is a full wipe of the 13 gun, and it crashes, and that is the end of that. Now, even if it didn't crash, even if the 13 gun did not get its captain killed, and then his backup captain killed, and then all of his crew killed, and then crashed on an island, we can see right now that the ship HP of this 13 gun is screwed at this point. So even if it were to survive, this would put the SCP way high up in its ship HP advantage, because that's a lot of ship HP that's invested in that 13 gun. If you look at, as an admiral, well, what I'm trying to do is reduce the total HP pool of my enemies and do it as efficiently as possible. You will see here that this is a huge problem for the Marines. Okay, so let's move beyond that, because I think I've talked it to death. What happens next is actually great. The reason that it works is because all of these 8 guns are facing in this direction. So let me get my little crayon here. All these 8 guns are facing in this direction, right? All of them, the SCP's 8 guns, are facing the wrong way to then whip about and come down here as these guys escape in this direction. The only thing that is facing in this direction is this guy, the 13 gun. So he's kind of stuck here. These guys are going to wrap around, and they're going to set up right here, and they're going to fire through this little channel and hit this 13 gun. And they do a really, really great job at that. This has the potential to be the beginning of a comeback. It is unfortunately not, for reasons that we'll talk about a little bit later. But let's take a look at this moment. This is just so great. This is such a testament to how strategy, positioning, and opportunity can come together to put hope into what looks like a lost cause. The 13 gun is dead against this island. It's got to maneuver itself so that it can slip past this island, and in the time it takes to do so, it's getting hammered. I think it goes down pretty far. Let's skip ahead and take a look. I mean, it's not quite down to half, but it gets pretty damn close. Now, what's happened between that moment and this moment is that it has slipped around this island, right? So what it had to do is it was here. It had to back up and then slip around, right? And during that time is when it was getting slammed. These guys then move forward to here. Now, I was scared of this moment, because here is not a great position when the entire SCP fleet is going to be united in coming here. But the SCP's 13 gun captain gets very cocky at this point, and he puts his 13 gun. He's going to swing it right here, and he's going to wait, and then he's going to pop out and charge in, which, again, the SCP, probably my favorite team in the league, honestly, because they are so much fun. I'm sad to say that probably upon introspection, maybe they're gonna pull that craziness back a little bit, and I'll have to choose a new favorite team if they're not gonna keep doing these wacky maneuvers. But for now, I love it. All right, so what we can see here is that develops. This line comes here. This line is here. These guys have to kind of come in to get in range of the 8s. The 8s vacillate between shooting at that 13 gun, and then they really don't shoot at these 8 guns too much. And I get why, right? You want to sink that 13 gun. You've got to get to a position where they don't have a very healthy 13 gun. But the 13 gun is not going to let that happen right away. He's going to hide behind this island. At first, I thought he was going to go through this channel here. He does not. That would have been a crazy maneuver, even crazier than the one he does. But here we are. So he then jumps out from behind this island. Yeah, it goes right in. Now, what you can do from this point is you run, right? And that's what the Marines do so great here. I would have liked to see it maybe a little earlier, but they end up doing it right at the right time. I criticized them during the broadcast, but I think in the end they probably did pull away at just the right moment, because it's when the 13 gun got really aggressive. They pull the 13 gun with them. Their retreat gets his 13 gun thinking really aggressive thoughts. Problem is that all of his 8 guns are not really in a position to follow him. And so, or they are going to follow him, but they're not going to be able to follow him quickly. They don't follow him quickly, and he gets walloped here in a way that is just a thing to behold. This is crazy levels of aggression from the 13 gun. As a 13 gun captain myself, I love it. But it is very dangerous. It's very dangerous. Um, so let's look at the next major positioning coup that the Marines get and how they kind of throw it away to unfortunately lose this battle. As you can see here, at this point, these 8 guns down here are like, holy crap. They have successfully, like, what's so genius about the Marines' move here is they got themselves out of the 8 gun range and forced the 8 guns to come in. Now, what the 8 guns are going to do is going to try and set up against this line, right? So they're going to try. It looks like these 8 guns are going to be here, so these 8 guns are going to swing around basically to here. The interesting thing about that is that this island provides some interesting cover for when the Marines go here. And this is where they should have stayed for the rest of the round, or at least for a lot longer than they did. Because they don't, they kind of throw the end of this match away for themselves, and it's a shame to watch. But it's a learning experience for everybody involved. Um, so these guys are going to just absolutely pound this 13 gun in a way that, again, I cannot applaud highly enough. Um, and let's get to a little bit further. So they sink the 13 gun. Like, how great is that? They get what they came for. The 13 gun sinks. But the SCP are feeling pretty confident at this point. Now, as the SCP turn in to, because they're right now, this is no position to be firing at the Marines. The Marines are firing at the SCP. So that's how you get an opponent to turn in where you want them to turn in. You hit them, right? And that's, I mean, maybe that sounds like super obvious, but, you know, by staying mostly here and firing into the front of these ships, you put fear into the enemy and they feel like they've got to turn in to return the fire, right? And that's what they do. This position, though, right here with this island being able to block some of your shots for a future, like, this is just awesome, because you'll see that the Marines get into a position where they're really able to reduce some of the fire from the SCP. So let's get to that. I want to get a snapshot. Right. Okay. So as I'm saying now, and I said before, and I said during, the positioning where this island is blocking some of the shots, especially from these two ships here. These two ships can't fire through here. And so if these guys were to set up here, they could basically focus fire on this guy, beat the hell out of him, focus fire then on the next guy, beat the hell out of him, and then these two guys would have to like swim up, and then they'd be in front. Like, as messy as my lines are now, that's how messy the situation would get for the SCP. And that's what the Marines need. They need the SCP to lose cohesion so they can pick them off one by one and start changing the trajectory here, because the SCP do have a pretty substantial HP benefit, or they have a stronger HP pool than the Marines. The Marines need to cut that down. And I think from this position, they really could have done it. And, we'll see what happens. So as the Marines move into this position where they have this semicircle going on, they are blocking some of their ships from getting hit. You can see only one of these ships is taking damage from all of these guys. And, I said it before and I'll say it again, right? By being here, you can see my past self drawing all the same lines I'm drawing now. They can really stop some of the fire from coming in from the SCP-38. The problem here is now what they're doing next. Going through this channel, huge, huge, huge mistake. There is something that I've said before, and I will say again. Admirals, you do not always have to go forward. There are so many times in a naval battle where staying in a position, holding a position, and forcing your enemy to adapt to that position is so much better than just moving forward. Marines here are losing, right? They are losing. And they were in a position where if they had hung out and forced, because look where the SCP are aimed at. The SCP ships are aimed this way. That's where it's easiest for them to go. But if you stay here, or God forbid you even stay like here, right? So that this ship can't hit you, this ship can't hit you, and this ship can maybe only hit one of your ships. You can bring 4 ships worth of fire onto one ship. That is wonderful. That's a great position. You don't leave a position that's good, that's that good. And these guys, to get to you, they have to turn around. It's going to be really slow just to get into a range where they can fight you. I would have, if I was there, like the devil or the angel, I guess, on the Marine's shoulders, I would have said, just stay. just stay. The SCP have to react to you. Instead, what they do is they go to where the SCP is strongest, which is to, I guess, the east down here, and they bring it and they create a line battle. Well, the SCP are going to win that line battle because they have more HP than you. So if everything is even and you guys hit an equal amount of shots across this, right? See, if they go in those directions that I'm saying, the SCP are going to win. They have more HP. You know at this point that they have more HP. They've beaten the hell out of you in the beginning of this battle in ways that you're not going to recover from unless you do something to change the amount of force that they can bring and increase the amount of force that you can bring. At worst comes to worst, one of their ships is basically this ship that they leave behind is like disabled. So that's even more important to not have a fair fight. You don't want a fair fight. You want an unfair fight. And so, unfortunately, this just goes and goes and goes and goes. And, we can talk about some of the individual maneuvers, which are really great. But spoiler alert, the SCP win this one. And they win it, pretty convincingly from here on out. They have all 4 of their 8 guns left. And so it's just, it went off a time, but there was only 1 Marine ship left. And so, hey, it's the Marines. There were moments where the Marines just really could have turned it around, and so you really see these flashes of genius in positioning here. And what I would say to Nazgul as the admiral, or any admiral who is watching this and trying to learn from this, I think the things to remember are, first of all, don't run into an enemy ambush. Right, that one I think we can all see was probably just the wrong decision to run one by one into that ambush in the beginning. Well, I can't call it an ambush because it was very easy to see coming that if you ran in that direction, they would hit you with all 4 of their 8 guns. They would hit one at a time. Um, but but at the end there, they had opportunities and they showed such great discipline after taking such a huge hit to their fleet. So the thing to say about the Marines is that they've got real like iron in their blood to be able to take such a devastating loss of a flagship and then still punch back very, very, very hard. Um, I think again, just a few alterations in their plans, keeping that cool head and seeing positions where you have strength and the enemy has weakness, and just drawing out those extra seconds of having more firepower to bear on the enemy than they have to you, that could have really turned things around. Could the Marines have come back? That's a question I think we could all debate. I don't know. I don't know if the Marines could come back, but I think they could have sunk more SCP-38 ships than they did. And that matters for points value. That matters for the impact and messages you send to the league. So anyway, that's sort of my final word on this. A really good battle, a really interesting battle to watch. I loved every minute of this one. All right, let's go to 6. This was one of mine. So as usual, when we're talking about one of mine, I'm not gonna like beat up the Royal Black Fleet in any particular way too much because they're not here to represent themselves and I am here to represent myself. I will tell you what I was thinking, and what I was thinking is I want to showcase to the league that having bad wind does not mean that you are doomed to lose, right? We've had many matches now, and there has been a lot of people who come in here and in these end of battle interviews with the admirals and say, well, the wind wasn't with us. Well, the wind wasn't with us. Well, the wind wasn't with us. That is not an excuse for losing. It is only a reason to adjust your play style. And so, I hesitate to put this into the ether here because as we see from the next battle, unfortunately, we don't want to create a meta where captains just don't do anything for the first half of the round, which definitely did happen in the battle after this. But as an admiral with bad wind, you've got to have a defensive mindset. You gotta, the enemy has good wind. They get to be the offense team. And if you have bad wind, you're the defense team. You just got to think of it that way. You just don't. There are options. You have options, and they don't have to be just to sit in place. Our motto in this battle was make the Royals waste their wind, right? Waste their wind, which is to say, they have good wind. I want them to use it early so that we can have it later, right? That's the fundamental thing in naval is that you want your opponent to have worse wind than you. And unfortunately, when you start with the wind against you, it's harder to do that. Let's talk about the opportunities I saw here and how I did manage to turn a bad wind into something that worked for us later on. So by stalling in the beginning, now I wanted the Royals to rush at me. Our plan, if I can go to the overhead here, we let a pretty good overhead just down there. So our goal, I will kind of detail it here for you, was to hope that by staying in this position here, we would lure these guys in, and it wouldn't be until around like here where they realize like, holy shit, like the Leviathans aren't going anywhere. But the Royals are a very cautious fleet. In many battles, that does not serve them. In this battle, it really did serve to stop them from falling into our trap because we have two gunboats right here. And their goal was whether the Royals went through this one or through this one, it was going to be to jet out, board their first ship, and then slam it into every other ship in their line. Okay. Then what we would have done is jumped probably like back here or in front and then just try to cut them off while they were in chaos, bunched up in one of these two passes. That is not how it happened, and kudos to the Royals for not getting hyper aggressive just because you have the wind. What ends up happening, of course, is that we both sit for a little bit. The thing here is that I see is that the Royals have kind of already ceded the wind to us. Now, waste their wind, right? What we want to do is waste their wind, and the wind is going northwest, right? So the wind is going this way, and as soon as they're pointed in that direction, they have a vulnerability because now if we go down this way and they want to come to us, now they've got to go kind of against that wind. It's not impossible for them to do. They'll have what we call half wind, right? Because they're going perpendicular to where the wind is, whereas we're kind of going directly against it. But we've got lots of space to do that. So I see this fleet kind of just situate themselves this way. And I want to bully the rear of their line, right? You want an enemy to break its formation. What you do is you pressure the rear of their line because it's hard to turn a whole fleet around. So anyway, that's what we try to do here. And as we're letting this go, I'm going to take a look at the chat because I do see a lot of buzz going on in the chat. All right. We've got Stark Stratios. Okay, I think the main thing people say about the wind was bad, myself included, is that we haven't wanted to have our crew sitting there for however long is needed for a mistake to happen. It's a lot of pressure for captains, admirals to make sure we perform so the matches are watchable. That is totally legitimate. You know, these are, as much as they are competition, they are also entertainment for those who watch us. So just like in this battle, you got to find a happy middle ground. Like you can't sit for half the battle like happens in the next battle. You know, we want to you want to create something that's not you have a crew who's coming to this for competition too. It's not just the people who are watching, it's the crews too. Like if you give them nothing to do all battle, they're not going to want to come back the next week because it's really freaking boring. So we don't sit for long in this one. We start our attack run pretty soon. I think at some point the Royals decide, because you can see the interesting thing here is that the Royals do position like they're going to go against the winds. Like if you look here, maybe if I go back just a little bit, you'll see it even more clearly, right? So they're positioned like, okay, maybe we'll come down here. Like they're coming at us. Why don't we go get the wind and hit them? I think they get a little nervous about going dead against the wind because if they go down here, maybe we could whip up around here. I can't get into their heads, and I don't want to because again, I'm here to represent myself. They're not. I can only say what happens. They start by going this way, but then they book it through here as we come around and pressure them. Our goal at this point is to get close to them. I want my 13 gun is a little offset. My 8 guns kind of go down here. My 13 gun kind of stays up around here. And that 13 gun is to guard this pass here while the 8 guns get into a position where they can whip around this way. Let's see how that works. All right, so we've got the fleet. The pressure. I believe again. My feeling here is the pressure that we put on by going to the southeast does put the concept in the head of the opponent that I am going to gain a better wind and bully the rear of his fleet, and he doesn't have the method to turn around and fight us in that way. So instead, he goes through his channel. He's thinking, I've got plenty of space to go through that channel. I've got plenty of time. They're going dead against the wind. They're not going to catch up to me very soon. Another thing that you could say about the Leviathans in this match is that we throw like every single rocket boat and gunboat at them. Our goal is to get aboard a ship and slow them down. We just want to get aboard a ship and slow them down. We do it over and over and over again. We throw every single boat at them to do it. It works one time, and there is and the one time it works is probably the most important time. In my opinion, throwing every one of those away was 100% worth. Uh, you're going to see here that we veer our fleet to stay out of their range. Right? I want to pressure the rear of their line, but I don't want to take any hits doing it. Right? I want them to go and waste their wind. So they have good wind right now. They're going directly with the wind. I want them to use that up. That's my goal here. Go use it up. And so let's get back to that overview and show, okay, so at this point, now keeping in mind that the wind is going this way, they have now gone that way and they've gone this way. So now they no longer have the best wind possible. The only way that they could continue to have really great wind is if, as we come up here, maybe they whip around. But that would probably just end up with us turning this way and we'd have ourselves a line battle. The Royals said in their after game interview that was not what they wanted. They didn't want a line battle. They wanted to win on points. They wanted to just eke out a win with points. And we really gave them what they needed to do that in the beginning. And that's by throwing all of our gunboats at them. Gunboats are points, right? They can get you a lot of points, but if you lose them all, you lose a lot of points. So by the end of this, I am in a position where I have to have a ship victory to beat these guys. Luckily, by the end of this, we have a very strong ship victory over them, and even their last two ships are down pretty low. So we do accomplish what we're doing here, but in different choices taken on both of our accounts could have led to them having a points victory over us, which would have had me punching air by the end of this. Anyway, so what we have the option we have now is we're going to chase their tail. Right, you'll see that I, as an admiral, really, really like to pressure the rear of enemies' lines because it forces them, again, to waste their wind, to use the wind just to escape me, rather than use it to claim an advantage of their own. So, as you can see, this is the rotation. This is a death spiral. There are islands in the middle, but this is a death spiral. And when we talk about death spiral in the context of a naval battle, it is when two fleets are circling each other, and one of them has the wind and one of them doesn't. So we come around and then we bum rush them, right? So they are now, just for your viewing pleasure, this is where the wind is going. It is going this way, basically. Yeah, they're now basically dead against it, going this way. So our only goal is to get across here. Okay. Now, something magical happens when this ship gets to around this area, and it is that the gunboats board them. We don't notice it in the announcer's box. The cameramen barely notice it, but it is our gunboat master, Safe, and one of the admirals of X, one of the admirals of the Leviathans, who boards the 13 gun and cuts its sails in a move that is just perfectly timed and perfectly done. And he gets us into a position where we can hammer this 13 gun. So you can see us just absolutely racing to cut behind the enemy fleet. And again, put pressure on their rear, hit them hard. We do so. And at this point, we are in control of the pace of the battle. And so that's where we want to be. That's where I always wanted to be. That's why we're pressuring the rear of their line to get them to waste that wind, because now their wind is not as good as ours, or at least it's equal. And I'm happy with an equal battle. I'm very confident in my cannoneers, and I'm very confident that we have kind of, the enemy fleet's formation is still quite good. So I just want to pause. This is the moment where this, I don't know if you can see it, but this little speck right here is the gunboat that is going to board their 13 gun, and somewhere around here is going to stop it. And that's stopping it. Once we see that, we just come in and fire all into it, and that is a real turning point for us. Um, and just I really want Safe to get the recognition he deserves for this just incredible play here. So anyway, you'll see once the sails raise, right? Raising a sail is actually turning it off, right? Disabling the sail. You'll see that when that happens, that's a big moment for us. Um, so yeah, and that's it right there. That's Safe cutting the sails. And he's done it in a position where it's just beyond this island here so that we can just rush in. He tells us this is what happens. And you'll see every one of my ships just beeline for that 13 gun. And I just tell him, hold that steering wheel. Do not let it go. Do not let these guys get their sails deployed again. Even when they kill him and they get their sails deployed again, they're so close to us, this 13 gun, so close to us. They would not want to be here if they had a choice, right? This is not where they wanted to be. Um, and all of our ships are able to hit them really hard. After that point, when we sink their 13 gun, then it's just a matter. It's a war of attrition, basically, at that point. So yeah, um, we can kind of watch it happen. Um, So we sink the 13 gun. This is Atticus here, kind of doing a suicide maneuver to draw all the fire of the enemy. And while he does that, I'm taking the 13 gun and turning it here. I would. The Royals really let my 13 gun do a lot at this point, and I'm very grateful to them for it. I have a lot of ship HP in my 13 gun, so even if they did turn some of their shots around towards me while I repositioned myself, I don't know how much damage they would have done compared to how much damage I could put into them, but nonetheless, my 13 gun is basically able to just throw shots really, really high arcs into some of their ships. And so, again, this war of attrition plays out. We both got 4 ships, but one of our 4 ships is the 13 gun, and they don't have a 13 gun, which means over time, unless they take my 13 gun out, we're probably going to win that exchange there. Interestingly enough, we have a lot of misses at this point, and it's because of the sort of like visual interference of this wall. It kind of makes it hard to see where the shots are hitting or whether they're hitting. And so, this is something that I think Admiral should note, that if you're against the wall, it does kind of decrease especially a far away enemy's ability to really sight and get your aim locked down. Nonetheless, this just continues to play out. I am very conservative with my 13 gun here because I'm thinking, like, if I'm them, at some point they're going to recognize that my 13 gun is almost crossing the T on their 8 guns, and they're going to somehow turn all their 8 guns into my 13 gun and really hit it hard. They mostly focus on the 8 guns because, again, they're now thinking, okay, we've got to win on ships. Maybe we're not going to sink their 13 gun, but maybe we can sink some of these 8 guns. I mean, this is me trying to get in their head. I am not representing what they actually ended up doing, but or what they were actually thinking. At this point, they begin to run, and they do that because, again, they want to preserve their ships. Maybe they can, again, 3-2-3 here. So maybe at this point they can pull back. We chase them. They sink one of our ships, and then they get the ship advantage. But we end up sinking one more of their ships and bringing the other 2 down to like almost nothing. Give this battle another, minute or 2, and I think the Leviathans, we would have sunk every royal ship if we could get in range. And I think by the end of it, we were kind of positioned to do so. It does time out towards the end, but let's just kind of take a look at how it ends up. We don't lose a lot of ship HP here. But what we do have, and I do want to note, is in the Royal Black's favor, is that this ship out here is kind of removed from the action and has to do a maneuver. So you can see how it's really 2v3 right now. This guy's got to come back in, and it takes him a while to do so. So that's a moment where the Royal Black Fleet can put a lot of damage on the 8 gun. Unfortunately, that 8 gun is pretty healthy. All of our ships are pretty healthy at this point, so it's not, with 6 minutes left, they'd have to do a tremendous amount of damage to sink it, and unfortunately they don't get to do that. We do sink one of theirs, and then we have the ship advantage. By the end of the battle, if you take a look, I mean, this is the last 22 seconds, and you can see the ship HPs are not looking good for the Royals, but they do manage to survive, and they do a great job. So this almost dead ship is this guy here, and he does a great job of hiding behind his ally ship. And I, in the 13 gun, am just too far away to really hit it. I want it, but he's out of range. I really should have focused fire and had my crew focus fire on this nearer ship, I think we could have taken it down. But with those last seconds to go, they do keep 2 of their ships up and stop us from gaining the points that we would have loved to have by sinking those 2 ships. So kudos to them for that last stand and how long they managed to do it. All right. Again, I don't want to get too much into dunking on the Royals here or tooting my own horn. Just more explain to you what we were thinking here. It was a battle that started with defensive mindsets from both teams. And I think if I had to make a critique of the Royals play style, and I really want to make it light, I think that they should have been more aggressive in the beginning. Now, I know our position looked pretty defensive, but a defensive position like ours does have weaknesses, and those weaknesses are at the front or the back of that line, which is to say that if we just kind of go back to the beginning, if they were to do something like, and again, I don't want to be hypercritical here. They're not here to represent themselves. This is just an option for food for thought. If they were to jet down here and then come up here and fire at the front, they would have forced me to dislodge. I would have had to go somewhere else, right? Probably would have just run this way. But this front ship is the weakness of this defensive line. Like, there is nothing in that says you have to take your ships and form a line across my line and fight a fair battle. So I would never do so, and I wouldn't expect my enemy to do so. Form up here and bully the front of my line and force and dislodge me from this position. That is a way that they could have had dislodged my defensive position. I see that we're having a bit of commercial break, so I will just repeat what I was just saying a second ago. And what I was saying is that if they had wanted to, they could have come here, formed a line here at a high distance, and fired into my lead ship, and that would have dislodged me. And so, that's certainly something that could have happened. They certainly didn't need to be as cautious as they did. They could have been more aggressive, and that maybe would have brought the battle in a different direction. But the Royals did have a plan, and they stuck to it. For better or worse, they stuck to a plan of getting a points advantage over us and then just keeping things even. And in different scenarios, with different circumstances, that may have worked for them. I don't want to get too critical here. I want to just present the facts as I saw them in the battle. So let's move on to a different battle, the last of the ones that we'll be covering today, and that is the most recent battle, Jackals versus the SCP-38. A huge, amazing upset from the Jackals. A stunning victory for them. So the Jackals on this map was the first battle we covered this week, and so let's see how they do things differently. Similar to last time, both of them seem to be going, I think, against the wind, southeast. It's not quite against the wind. The wind was bad for the Jackals here, and so as you're seeing in the chat, as Charney says, he is not here for your entertainment. He's here to win. I do want to comment on the formations that both of these fleets bring to bear and that sit in for what I consider an absurdly long time. So this is a really interesting thing that we have here. Sarni's position here is just great. He keeps an island guarding, like this island here guards him as he sets up here, right? These guys are not going to be able to just come in and hit him from the side. So that's really cool. But what the SCP have here is like a loaded gun, and they just don't pull the trigger, and I don't know why. When you split into 2 separate divisions, you have so many cool opportunities, and the SCP have been flirting every battle to split up and utilize it. So SCP-38, let's talk about how you can really do it, okay? Because you can do it, you should do it. This should be a total meta in this league, and you are at the forefront of pushing us inch by inch closer to that meta, but we never quite get there. So what do you do here? What you do not do is come and just link your fleets up. What you do is you take an enemy who doesn't have great wind, just like this, and you fake them out. The nice thing about having this position is it would work basically equally well here, or here, or, I mean, even honestly here, because where is the wind going? It's going this way. So this battle group here, at any time it wants, can jet down. Anytime it wants, it can jet down. So you take this group, You bring it out here, and then you just kind of stop it. You stop it right here. You keep these because this is a choke point right here. So you don't go through that choke point. You go somewhere like here and force them to come down here and fight you, and then you bring these guys in to hit their rear, right? This is the guy who goes for the rear of the fleet, and this is the guy who baits the fleet out. It is a situation that requires impeccable timing, you know, impeccable timing. But it does not necessarily. Like, you can do it. I believe in you guys. You guys can do it. You've got the timing. You guys have great admirals. You got great captains. They are capable of doing this. You have this brave formation, and then you just don't use it, and it breaks my heart because, again, I love the SCP-38s. Um, they've got all style, right? And unfortunately, we've seen this. We saw this in their battle with the Royal Black Fleet. They have an understanding and mastery of fleet formation and of utilizing wind. But when opportunities present themselves to utilize them, they just don't pull the trigger. And this is another opportunity of not pulling the trigger. So, we've talked before, and I know, again, we've heard from the SCP-38s. They think like, oh, maybe we should be a bit more conservative with our 13 guns. And I agree. You should probably be a little bit more conservative with how you use your 13 guns. But I don't want you to be conservative with your fleet formations because you've got genius. You've got lightning in a bottle with this stuff. Use these fleet formations the way that you want. Like, you could see that you want to use these fleet formations in this way. Do it. The Jackals have a defensive position. Defensive positions are inherently something that you can manipulate by just pressuring them. You put pressure on them, and then you can dislodge them from the defensive positions, force them into bad positions, and then take advantage of those bad positions. So anyway, that's not what happens here. Unfortunately, these guys get into a line battle. So let's skip to that line battle. Oh, and I just want to mention something the Jackals do really well. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but the Jackals do this thing. Let me see. I think I actually 2954. So 2954. So you can see that the SCP put their 13 gun forward to bait out the Jackals, but the Jackals are the ones that bait them. And they do it by this interesting little turn here where you can see their ships kind of look like they're going to go this way. They don't, because they end up coming this way. But as soon as they turn this way, the SCP are like so ready to just do something, so ready for action to happen that they just take the bait, right? They go for it. They want it. They take it. And so what happens is, as soon as these guys start doing this, you know, don't mind what just popped up. Sorry about that. As soon as they do that, the whole SCP just starts moving. And then the Jackals go right back to the original plan, which was going downwind. Okay, so then these two meet up in a line. Now let's talk about why the Jackals win this. The Jackals win this for two reasons, this line. Because this is the SCP fleet just congeals. They come back into a line. Any hope of that split formation is now gone. Doesn't have to be, by the way. There's no reason that these two ships down here couldn't cut in front or anything. I mean, you got the wind. The wind is going this way. Anything you do to pressure them from any way, you anyway. I've talked about that too much. Let's talk about the situation that we have. The Jackals win this by two things. First off, three things. They focus fire tremendously on the enemy 13 gun, which is great. The other thing they do is they have a much more compact line, right? Whereas the SCP line is more drawn out, and therefore these two ships cannot hit the 13 gun. They're too far. Whereas every one of these ships can hit the 13 gun on the SCP side. So it's just a matter of the length of your battle line. The other thing that the Jackals do is just this like incredible fleet management. And that fleet management takes the form of taking ships out of the battle when they look like they're getting too low. You'll see I'll try and actually show it to you, right? So the first one we see is the lead ship backing up. This ship here is going to reverse because it's taken a tremendous amount of damage. It's going to reverse behind the fleet and it's going to kind of go back here and get just barely slip out of the battle. And this, once he takes a tremendous amount of damage, but he doesn't sink. And once he's done, he's done. The Jackals never put him back into the battle, as they should not, but it's so amazing to see them hold to keep that ship and deny the SCP the points that they want for sinking it. They then do the same thing with this ship here, which then just gets the hell out of here. And meanwhile, the whole time, these guys are slamming shots in the 13 gun and they sink it. They sink the 13 gun. And then so the 13 gun goes down and they sacrifice 1.5 ships worth of HP for it. A good trade, a good trade. The 13 gun is worth probably like 2 whole 8 guns, maybe 2.5 8 guns. So that's the math you got to be doing as an admiral. All right, so let's move on. The SCP-13 gun sinks, and at that point, they have managed to sink none of the Jackal ships, though they've gotten very close to sinking one of them, and they got the other one down to half. Reserving that half strength 8 gun is like really so cool, and they bring it back because this is where it is over here. But the SCP do what I think is correct, and they do a tactical withdrawal because this battle ain't working for them. So they withdraw. The Jackals are not hot to chase them. They're happy to hold the center, and they do so very, very well. Now, it looks at this point like the SCP could have the Jackals at a disadvantage, but all the Jackals have to do is turn right, and they've got their whole fleet, because their whole fleet is, this is in a good line, right? It's in a good line insofar as most of these ships are in line, because so when they turn and turn and turn, and this one just kind of finds its position here, we are looking at a pretty good line here. So the Jackals are in no danger here. They're doing great. And they're going to outnumber and outfight their enemies, but they're going to do even more than that. They're going to cut their enemies off and force a situation where those enemies are running directly into the teeth of all the Jackal ships. It is a coup de grace at the end here, and it is a thing to behold. Now, the way that they do it, and we're going to see when we get to the overhead, is they're going to use this island's beach, which funnels the SCP to have to, like the SCP would love to just cut across this island and just stay in a line, but they can't. And the Jackals see this and they curve inwards, which is just awesome. They curve inwards and they blockade the only exit the SCP are going to have. It's a thing of beauty. It really is a thing of beauty, and it really shows the level of control that the Jackals can put on their fleet. Beautiful positioning. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You know, nothing but compliments for the Jackals. This is the win that they desperately, desperately needed in this league. And it really shows that when the Jackals are together, when they're confident, when they're strong, and they're led with a lot of control and micromanagement, that they absolutely can win battles in stunning form. The SCP try to just blow through the blockade, but that is not good. This is them blowing through the blockade, but these two ships over here on the left expertly do what they've got to do, which is like, okay, yeah, you can blow through the 13 gun, you can blow through the 8 gun, but those two 8 guns, the Jackals are still going to punish you. And if you focus on these two ships that you've blown past, they're going to cut you off even more. They're going to keep the pressure up, giving the 13 gun and the 8 gun plenty of time. This 13 gun can now cross behind these ships, which it's going to do, hit them from the rear. Like, blowing through a line is only good if you've got basically the same amount of firepower as the enemy. Now I know why the SCP are doing it. Of course, they just got to get out of this horrible position. Like, they can't stay with their T-cross. So like, I don't blame them for trying to do it. But at this point, it's damage control. 2 minutes 30 seconds left. It's like, how can we just stop these ships from sinking so that we don't lose more points? But I mean, this is just a really great victory for the Jackals. Do I wish that some of this action had happened 15 minutes beforehand? Like, yeah, of course. I think we all do. But a stunning battle from the Jackals, and for the SCP-38, I feel like it's a opportunity not taken. And that's my usual critique of the SCP-38s, is that they have these brilliant ideas. They don't pull the trigger on them because I think they get a little hesitant to try the new thing that they've conjured up in their minds. And I would encourage the SCP-38. You've listened to my advice before, SCP-38. When I asked you to get aggressive, you got aggressive and you won. Listen to my advice now, SCP-38. You have ideas worth executing, and I would love to see you execute them in the way that you can. Go and do it, and I think you will really like the results. Anyway, I have kept us here for quite some time, and I really do want to wrap this up because I have some things I have to get to this evening, and this has been a lot of talking for me and a lot of listening for all of you. And I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you learned some things for it. The purpose of these war rooms is not to dunk on any of these guys and critique any of these teams. It's not to, opine on how much more knowledge or better I am than anyone else or anything like that. I have a lot of experience in doing this, and I want to share what I have learned with other people and talk about the decisions that are made here in a constructive way. But there's a lot of you guys out there that have tons of experience yourselves. And I encourage you guys all to be analyzing these matches in your own way because I am not the final authority on any of this. This is my perspective. I hope it benefits people. I hope it's something that you guys enjoy listening to and you get something out of. But it is your responsibility as admirals and players in this league to do this kind of introspection on your own, to analyze the battles of other teams, find out their strengths and weaknesses, and utilize them for your own benefit. Because what I will give here is an impartial view, but you really need to get in there and do it as well for yourself, especially when you're about to fight a team. We have a lot of data on these teams now. We have a lot of instances of how they play. Get out there and figure it out. Because in watching other teams, you can see their strengths and weaknesses, and you can learn the methods to which you can exploit those strengths and weaknesses against them. And all I can say to each of these teams is all of them show a tremendous amount of growth from the preseason. We're well into the first season now, and every single team, regardless of their record, regardless of their points, every single team has gotten so much better than they were in the preseason. Those were like watching toddlers learn to walk, and now we are like watching sort of adolescent teams really begin to explore the depth of tactical possibilities that are available to them in this league. And watching it is just like so cool. It's so cool for me. This is my dream, This league was a dream that I had to see Naval, this game mode that I love in Holdfast, at its highest and most advanced and complicated level. And I just want to thank all of the admirals. If you felt, I hope you don't feel like, in analyzing what you do here, that I am in any way in sitting in judgment of you in a negative way. Instead, I am like a sort of proud parent watching this thing that I put together grow and develop and mature. And each of you in your own way are growing and developing and maturing as admirals and as fleets and captains together and all this, and then the crews themselves. And it touches me deeply at an emotional level, to see every one of you guys trying hard to win these battles, and doing such a great job at it. And so I hope that you all enjoy the NSL. I hope all of you viewers enjoy the NSL, and we will keep delivering to you the absolute best in naval combat, the best that we can do it, and with the highest production value that we can get. Um, I hope that you have enjoyed today's episode of the Wardroom. I will see you again in a few weeks. Um, I'm sure Control Room can put on the screen or maybe Future Battle. I'm not sure um, whether they do or don't. If not, that's fine. Um, but either way, this is going to be the end for me. And I also want to announce, something exciting. I think, speaking as a Leviathan's admiral, I am going to be stepping not back permanently, but I am going to be stepping back for the next few battles as the admiral for the Leviathans. And it is time to allow some of my other admirals in the fleet, specifically Atticus and Safe, to get into the league and show you all what they are capable of. And so I will be not only commenting on battles that the Leviathans are not part of, but I will be commenting on Leviathan battles in the future. As we watch the next one, I think it's going to be Safe. Some of these guys really show their stuff out there, and so I'm very excited to see them, and I wish them the best of luck. And I will be just as exacting and critical of their battles as I have been of anyone else's. And so I will see you in the next War Room. We will have a whole group of other battles to analyze. Thank you, everybody, for your time and your attention. And have a great weekend, a holiday weekend for those of you who celebrate. Lemerk out.